Okay, Kim and Anami, welcome to the Conversations with Adrian podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's nice to finally meet you. Well, virtually. I've been listening to your voice and watching your videos for a couple of years now, and been really engaged in your content and the things that you put out, the messaging and stuff like that. It's really helped me a lot. So thank you.
Glad to hear it. That's great.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you. I know you've got a couple of workshops coming up and a few things which I want to touch on. I really like the basis and I guess the premise of your work, which is to help people explore sex with themselves and with an intimate partner. But I particularly like your messaging around a conscious relationship and a conscious partnership, and something that is really akin to, I guess, my trajectory in terms of the last maybe 3 or 4 years. As bad as that sounds, it's like, how could you finally wake up to a conscious relationship just so recently? But I think my personal experience is getting to know myself and getting to know those darker sides of me in terms of things that I've been hiding away for a while. That has really helped me kind of like explore the other side of the growth that comes out within knowing yourself. So I guess I wouldn't mind talking to that, because in terms of your work, in terms of how people view sex and sexual activity and intimacy and Tantra and, all of these other things in terms of deeper connection through that act of connecting with someone on a physical level, is it sort of has this, as I look back, just a number of different aspects that have kind of marred or skewed my perception of what that means or what that looks like in terms of experiences. Am I making sense so far?
Yep. And are there some in particular that you want to touch on?
Well, I think like nothing particular, but I guess that there's a taboo like topic around intercourse and around, if you're a woman, for example, and you like sex, then you're a slut, and if you're a man and you like sex, well, that's just typical because you're a man. And then there's all these sort of like different avenues, I guess, which have kind of dissuaded my opinion of sex and intercourse and things like that. It's obviously like conditioned as well by pornography and all those sorts of things. So I guess I'm talking to those kinds of outside influences, and I wouldn't mind you sharing some of your discoveries over your work and the things that you've been sort of teaching on the last several years that you've been getting through this type of training. So
Like
you know what I mean?
35 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How long? Sorry.
35 years.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So look, I think there's a very deliberate distortion of all things sexual, where we have things that are freely available, like porn. You have sex that's in the media, advertising, television, like sex sells toilets and toothbrushes and cars. And yet, you're not really allowed to have sex and enjoy it. Like there's this contradiction and paradox going on all the time that I think really does people's head in, right? Like, okay, I'm a sexual being, I have sexual urges, procreation is the most natural thing we could be engaging in on the planet, and
Mm.
yet there's so much mire and I'd say misinformation about all things sexual, and like red herrings, right? Where even in the work, I'm going to be trying to adjust for the sun coming up here,
Yeah.
is like, there's um like I said, a cheapened, more lust-oriented version of sex is freely available online, but my work ends up getting censored. My work talking about using sex to find God, or using sex as a personal growth tool, or using sex to self-actualize, that's dangerous.
Hmm.
But using sex to just jerk off and put yourself to sleep, totally fine,
Totally
totally
fine.
acceptable.
Hmm.
Using titties to sell, Ferraris, or like I said, pants or gardening tools, like all good, totally fine. So this very superficial version of sex is fully allowed, but anything that speaks to the deeper, more transformative nature of sex, you have to really search for and cultivate. So my work, I'm gonna like move all the way over here.
That's right. You'll be doing 360 soon.
Yeah, pretty much. So the whole premise of my work is that sexual energy is life force, procreative energy. This is the energy that we literally use to make new life. And if we're not making babies with it, then we can channel this energy into our lives, into our own healing and rejuvenation and creative manifesting of everything we do in our existence. And most people, their experiences of sex are typically a duty that happens within a relationship or a quick way to fall asleep or to have some stress relief, right? And I would say that all of those things are ways in which we use sex to become unconscious versus my work, which is about using it as a consciousness expanding and opening tool, a way to elevate every element of our existence.
Mm, yeah. And I think that with the most amount of pushback when you get resistance with regards to your work, is it because of the notion or the conditioning that you shouldn't be talking about things at this level, or people shouldn't be experiencing this this states of bliss and desire and all those sorts of things? Or are people pushing back because they've never really attained it, so therefore they're thinking that you're sprouting some sort of, you know, charlatan's work of trying to convince people that there's something there that's not?
A little bit of the latter, but I think it's more framed in this current climate in our culture of everyone gets a participation trophy,
Mm,
right? Where there's no longer this lauding of achievement and, the highest level that you could experience in something. And so I have something that I call the Anami guarantee, which
mm,
states that everyone can. Every woman has a high libido, is salacious, can lubricate and ejaculate profusely at any age and stage of their lives. Every woman can have G-spot orgasms, cervical orgasms, and ejaculate across the room and shoot
mm,
ping pong balls with her vagina.
mm,
Every man can learn to have stamina where he can go from an hour to 3 hours to 8 hours. He can be multi-orgasmic. He can have wild erections into his 90s, and he can learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation. Every woman and every man can do these things. I guarantee it. So the only pushback that I might get is against something like that, where people saying, well, that's not, if some women just can't do that, and it's like, no, that's fucking bullshit, and that's brainwashed programming that you've taken in. Again, very conducive to the climate we're in right now of there, little girl, don't you worry your pretty little head about that. If you can't do that, that's okay, right?
mm,
And so I'm like, no, it's not okay. You're missing out on a huge amount of power and pleasure in your life. In fact, these are self-defining experiences that every woman and man needs to be having. And I can show you how to get there. Right. And a big part of why people don't get there are these very deliberate seeding of taboos and obscuring, right? Like you mentioned the Madonna whore thing, right?
mm,
Very, from the earliest age, right? We get this programming of Madonna whore, where a woman is either a slut or a virgin, but there's not really anywhere in between that to be a voracious, salacious, healthy sexual being. And at all turns, we see this reinforced. Like, show me a movie where there isn't a token hooker just
mm.
because, right? There's always a fucking hooker, right? It's like, why? Why do we need, it's like just to remind you, Madonna whore, Madonna whore, Madonna whore, all the time. So this is imprinted into women, it's imprinted into men. And so even if we could consciously look at that and say, well, that's not true, I don't really believe that, we have to remember we've been bombarded by this messaging from the earliest age, and how much a lot of that has seeped in unconsciously, right? So we can consciously say, yeah, I don't buy into that, but unconsciously, yeah, of course we have on some
Mm,
levels, right? And so part of the work that I do, I call it demon hunting, which is to go actively looking for these blockages, these false beliefs that we've taken in. So, with this premise that I state that everyone has this potential, then what's blocking it? Well, beliefs, traumas, experiences, ideas that we've taken in from our family, from the culture at large, that we then have to piece through and chuck away to unveil what's beneath that, which is this pure divine channel energy source.
mm. Yeah, wow. And so without giving away all your secret sauce recipes and things like that, like how do you push through that without having some sort of 3 day shamanic led fucking retreat thing where people go through the dark night of their soul? And is there, how do people bridge the gap between facing those beliefs and those unconscious programs and those self-sabotaging behaviors that they've ingrained on an unconscious level for many decades of their life?
Mm.
Because and we're not just talking about just the subliminal messages that's going on in society, we're also talking about sexual things that have happened of a sexual nature, whether it might be abuse or whether it might be just a certain experience, and it's, I guess, hamstrung the individual to thinking that there is a limitation within themselves. So how do you kind of like push through those boundaries in order to awaken people to this opportunity?
Yeah, I think the first step is showing them what's possible, right? So if I put this out there as the Anami guarantee, I'm holding the bar to say, yeah, you can too, right? Because a lot of people can come in and think, well, okay, other people can do that, but I'm just one of those people who can't. Because that's the dominant messaging already, is that, hey, some people can have these kinds of orgasms and some people can't. Some people are more sexual than others, some people just aren't, right? And so a lot of people just buy into that as a baseline, like, oh, well, I tried and I just couldn't, so I guess it's just not me. And that's number one. Like, from the easiest example of that is me saying, look, all women can have G-spot orgasms, let's say. And a woman hears that and she goes home that night, tries, and has her very first G-spot orgasm just because I told her that she could,
Wow.
right? So for other people, it's going to take longer, right? They could have an accumulation of more baggage, more trauma, more beliefs that they have to work through to be able to let that come to the surface. So part of it is just like, um, you don't know what you don't know. And my podcast, Orgasmic Enlightenment, features what we've called all fucked, well fucked all stars, where
Stars.
we
Yeah.
interview alumni, people who've gone through my programs, had incredible breakthroughs and success, so they can share their stories. Like, let's say a woman who's never had an orgasm in her life before, and now she's got G-spot orgasms, cervical orgasms, throat gasms, anal gasms, nipple gasms, and 4 birth orgasms under her belt, having fully ecstatic orgasmic births, right? Or a man who was like, let's just say, in his beta male phase or taken in a lot of indoctrination around that and is now, acing everything, or was a premature ejaculator, like a 2 pump chump, we like to call them, and went from a 3 minute sexual repertoire to now having like an hour, 3 hours at a time, and becoming
Mm.
able to separate orgasm from ejaculation. So we put all that out there so people know this is possible, right? That's number one step. And to just hear these stories over and over and over again and feel the energy coming from these people, which is, inspirational and infectious. And you're like, holy, and this is actually what's given birth to the well fucked woman and man meme that I talk about, where I say that when you're truly well fucked, and to be well fucked isn't just having lots of sex, it's when you're inhabiting your sexual energy in such a way, you're owning it, you're utilizing it as a power source, as I've talked about, that you're radiating a kind of charisma, a magnetism, an attractiveness that literally draws moths to the flame, where we have stories of people being out in public and they've had this epic sex session the night before, and they get people like running, literally running across the street to approach them and ask them for their numbers when they're wearing sweats and like, flip-flops and just like schlepping around,
Yeah.
because there's something so palpable and delicious that is drawing people to them. And that's their sexual energy that they're wearing. They're now radiating the quality of being well fucked, where they're owning that energy. So that's that. And then, systematically going through how to identify and remove these blockages that we're holding on to. And then prioritizing sex, recognizing that sex is the most important thing in your intimate relationship. It's the glue. It's the thing that, like, if you're the only thing that really distinguishes that relationship from any other relationship you have. presumably, is that you're having sex with your partner, or not sometimes, but ideally you are. And realizing that that is a place that you go to recharge. Literally, you're plugging into each other at this deepest cosmic, archetypal, yin yang polarity on the physical plane energy to get rejuvenation from each other and to be a channel for this divine power. And so when couples are feeling like, we've got so much work, we have children, we have chores, we don't have any time to have sex. No, the most important thing you could be doing is having regular sex so that you can get the fuel that you need to transcend all that's going on in your life and do it with more patience, love, creativity, and focus that you'll find is a product of having this regular connection with each other.
Mm, yeah, sounds great to me. So, what's your definition of a well fucked woman versus a well fucked man? Do they have distinguishable differences, or are they kind of encompassing the same outcomes?
Similar outcomes, but I think what happens when each of them is well fucked, they're really embodying the true archetypal qualities of their gender, of their sex. And so the woman is then more firmly grounded in her femininity, meaning that she's able to get things done in the world from her feminine energy, from a place of flow, receptivity, surrender, letting go, ease, and grace. She's not slogging it out there and wearing the energetic cape of the masculine, thinking that that's what she needs to do to get things done in the world. And the
Mm,
man, conversely, in terms of what's happening in our world these days, is rejecting the idea that he needs to be a fucking beta bitch. And he mans up and really owns and inhabits his masculine energy. And he's assertive, he's strong, he embodies that notion of being the protector of the realm, the provider, the protector for his family, and he embodies this essence in a powerful way. So that, and that's kind of the each individual sex, and then an overall for both energy of embodiment and self-actualization. You become more of the person you're really meant to be, where the civilized facades and defense mechanisms and ego shields we've taken on over the years through every very deep and transformative sexual encounter, those fall away more and more and more. And this much truer, authentic, self realized version of who you are emerges and then is active out in the world. And
mm,
that's one of my favorite things. Like, I'm all about pleasure and orgasms, but I'm actually more deeply fascinated by this idea of using sex as a vehicle for self-actualization and transformation. And the big barometric question that I always put out there to people is, does sex leave you feeling energized, rejuvenated, transformed, ecstatic, and like it changed your life? And if it isn't, then you're doing it wrong, right? There's a way to have sex that energizes you, which is what I put out there as that's its purpose,
mm,
versus depleting you. Like you ought to feel like you want to go to the gym or run a marathon after having sex rather than passing out and, being totally checked out and dissociated.
mm. Yeah, so true. You touched on a few things there. I think there's a trend, or it's not really a trend. I think it's something that's I've been talking about for quite some time off air, and then more recent years on air, in the fact that we have this sort of hyper masculine women that have been conditioned, whatever you want to call it, to think and feel and act more like men, and they're sort of like praising each other for their masculine qualities in terms of this boss babe and all those sorts of things. And not that I don't think there's anything wrong with any woman who wants to have ambition and drive and do all of those things. I personally think women are the most powerful beings on the planet. They can, like you said at the outset, they can give life. So they're the most powerful beings, and in my opinion. But then you've got this men that are kind of like hyper feminized and really get into this. We've got this thing in Australia. I don't know if it's a universal thing, but a snag, like a sensitive new age guy. So someone who's very in touch with their emotions and feelings, but also more sort of subordinate and taking orders and all those sorts of things. So I think that that pendulum really swung, quite rapidly, and I feel like it's gravitating back towards center. Although I don't know, I'll get your take on it. I think we've got this dance in between the two, where some men are kind of really hyper masculine and kind of like playing in that area quite forcefully, and then there's women that are kind of like too much into their feelings and femininity and things like that. What's your take on that?
Well, look, I think the range and gamut exists out there. I'm more interested in the movement, and I think it's a growing movement of people who are recognizing these things and also seeing through what's very clearly programming,
Mm.
right? And to a large degree, like chemical poisoning of the populace that's
Oh yeah.
creating so much of these behaviors that we're considering or being told are just like a normal preference, but they're being very deliberately manufactured. So I'm more interested in this growing movement of people who are recognizing these more natural states of women in their more feminine energy and men in their more masculine. And yes, all of these other areas exist or have been created on the spectrum. But in my work, over the decades of doing this work, I've never had a couple come to me where, let's say, the woman was in her hyper masculine and the man was in his hyper feminine, who are actually happy ever. They're
Mm.
resentful, they're frustrated, they're angry, they're underfucked, they're suffering in every possible way. And then if they recognize and then do this work to reestablish what I'd consider to be their natural polarity, where she's existing more in a feminine state, him in a masculine state. And of course, look, we all have fluidity, we all move and animate different parts of ourselves at different times, but I'm talking as a generalization that
Mhm.
women, like, what's the point of being in a female body then, right? Or what's the point of being in a male body if you aren't here to learn the lessons inherent of that archetypal polarized energy, right? That's my view anyway. And it's played out in working with, thousands of people over decades, is that when people come in with that reversed polarity and then they put it back, they're happy, they're deliriously happy, they're having sex, they have chemistry again, their lives are being fueled by their intimate connection, they go out of being burnt out. And because what happens when you're using an energy source that isn't native to you? It's like drinking coffee all the time to get energy,
Mhm.
right? You might seem okay for a while, but eventually you're tapping out your adrenals, you're like burning out your whole system because it's not native to you. If you could learn to actually get that energy from within, that's what's going to fuel you in a way that's energizing and that much more powerful. And there's a beauty of like, look, Ma, I can do it myself, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't need these and in external sources. So, as I said, through decades of seeing people heal and reestablish that, that's where they're happiest. I've
Mhm.
never, ever, ever seen it. Sometimes they might come in with a bit of bluster and an ideological concept that they feel loyal to or that they, have identified with that they want to hold on to. But when I, pull back the layers and see often where it's a defense mechanism, right? Like, let's say in a couple's relationship where the man, and it becomes a vicious cycle, right? Where like the man is backing down and not taking charge and owning his masculinity. So the woman steps up and she's like, well, if he can't do it, I'm going to have to do it. She doesn't want to do it, but she does. So
Mhm.
she starts being the active decision maker and organizer more and more every single time she does that, resenting him. And then if he tries to step up, and takes some charge and he does it wrong or he falters, she'll bite his head off and he's like, oh, it's just better for me to like hang my head and like hide in the corner, right?
Yep.
So this dynamic gets established and they both fucking hate it, they both resent it, they don't want it, but they're stuck. And
Mm.
sometimes they can't even put words to what that is. It's just become how they are. And so when they come along, let's say, and find me, and I can help them put words to it and help them to reverse it, they're always happy. But those facades had been built out of fear, hurt, not like trying to trust and then being let down. that's where they come from, not that they're natural places that these people have just evolved into. It's evolved out of hurt and pain.
Yeah, it is quite an evolution. And I think that when you get to a degree where you're curious and you want to find out more about, you mentioned the interesting word polarity, like why there is a polarity that is in opposition of one another, and you can't figure out why. I think that that kind of role reversal is certainly like a huge part. But you mentioned a few things, and I'm glad you talked about just things that are, I guess, affecting people on an unconscious level. And it's through, like, this is some of the things that I teach in my workshops, is like, you just got to be mindful of, like, not only what goes in your mind, but what goes in your mouth and in your body, like, you know, in our air and our, these, like lately, the vaccines. I mean, it's just like, there's so much information about how our endocrine system has been fucked with on an everyday basis through microplastics, through your makeup, through the water that you drink. Like, it's just a fucking nightmare. It's like, it's always just a constant battle
Mm.
to rid yourself of these toxins which are plaguing your femininity or masculinity, conversely your ability to procreate, even think clearly as a man or a woman, and get in contact with your higher self, I guess, you know, so you can live authentically and congruently with how you want to project yourself out into the world. So I think a lot of that is certainly an agenda. It seems very clear and evident that it's happening. I'm not sure if you know. You should obviously know about forever chemicals and things like that. And I've there's a huge case that's just come out in the last couple of years within Australia in Wreck Bay, where they've found these forever chemicals that have been dumped through firefighting foam, and it's affected the waterways and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's in everyone's fucking blood. And that has an incredible impact on just the way you conduct yourself through life. So I think, you know, the more people can kind of go back to a natural state, and a lot of this messaging that you come back to is a natural state of harmony within, and not being led by outside influences which are telling you to do the things that you do, or you're trying to become the person that you think other people would want to see in yourself, instead of connecting to your truest highest self and then projecting that version of yourself onto the world. Am I making sense?
Yeah, and I think the beautiful thing about this sexual self-realization process I talk about is that you become unstoppable. It's not something that you're trying to do, like, I'm going to try not to care what other people think about me. I'm going to try to be my best self. No, 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 no. You just need to get well fucked. You need to deepen your sexual relationship with yourself and your partner, and that is a natural outcome that is you're not trying not to give a fuck, you just don't give a fuck, right? You start to make choices that are more in alignment with your highest truth. And that can be within your relationship, within your friendships, your social circle, your body, food choices, your job, and your vocation. You start to make aligned, truthful choices. And
Mm.
again, it's not because you're sitting down and taking like a vocational aptitude test and you're like, oh, I guess it's time to change my job. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you go fuck yourself, and that's going to guide you to your highest truth. At
Mm.
least if you're having the kind of what I call Anami gourmet style sex,
Yeah.
right? Like, again, this kind of sex that can be used as an escape, as junk food, as a quick hit, versus the kind of sex that's actually contributing to changing your life and making you into the better, highest version of yourself. And the
Mm.
key ingredient in gourmet sex is surrender, is openness, trust, being able to let go, fully be seen, and be vulnerable. So that's a multi-dimensional relationship where you're showing up in every part of yourself, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and you're coming together with all these facets of yourselves and showing up there. And that's where the magic happens. That's where you truly harness this procreative power of sexual energy. And that's why, like I said, I think it's very deliberate that these much more superficial, lust-based, and like I don't use that word out of judgment. It's more like, what's the most conscious use of our energy? These kinds of encounters are promoted so freely, but the deeper messaging of the profound, use and value and harnessing of our sexual energy as an actual spiritual enlightenment tool, that's the message that gets heavily censored and obscured.
Yeah, so true. How do you navigate for someone that's listening who is looking for that conscious connection and partner, but is in the pursuit of it, I guess. They're single and they're, for want of a better word, playing the field or seeing what else is out there. How do you work towards that gourmet sex and avoid the junk food sex whilst you're trying to discover, attract, align with your conscious partner?
I would say that you declare a period of conscious celibacy. And instead of wasting your time and your seed and your energy on randos, is that you put that energy into cultivating and healing yourself, right? Like usually what happens is people are in a relationship, they break up, and then they do that enough times and they see there's certain patterns. I always attract this kind of woman or this kind of man. It's like, because you've never actually up leveled yourself and then, put yourself into a new frequency and vibration to attract a higher level partner because you haven't done the work yourself to up level yourself. We attract at the level we're currently at in whatever mirror that shows up. So if we're complaining that we don't like the quality of people we're bringing in, where do we look? Right.
Mm,
And so all of my work is geared towards both singles and couples that you can use these practices and principles to cultivate your own sexual energy, use it to heal, use it to illuminate and your own shadow and alchemize your wounds, your trauma, your, insecurities, your negative energies to something more positive, and then you'll attract a higher level partner at the end of that.
yeah.
And, I went through after my last major breakup, I did a 2.5 year period of conscious celibacy where I didn't set out a particular, length of time. I was just like, I know there's one major area in my life that I felt like I need to fix this and up level it if I'm going to be able to show up properly in my next relationship. And I did.
Mm,
I took that much time, and it was about after 2.5 years. And I wasn't like, I didn't have the door fully closed. I was like, look, if somebody comes along who seems like a great match, then sure. But if not, I'm just doing my thing and practiced all the principles of my work, and then about 2.5 years into it I just felt like this like what do you call it, like vacancy sign, like availability sign, just went
yeah.
neon, and I could feel it, like, okay, I feel I'm ready. And literally within 1 week I met 3 men, just out of not even trying to meet men. One was on a beach, one was on a plane, one just reached out to me. Like, I didn't do anything apart from go fuck myself and
Mm,
unfuck myself for that amount of time. And then they all just appeared. And these were high quality contenders, right? They weren't just like whatever, like they were all serious contenders, or I had to pick. Like, so, I really believe, and like that's not, the process for anyone could be shorter or longer, but I think that it's more important to conserve your energy and direct it towards yourself. And then, you'll know when it's time and you'll feel when it's time. And then, I don't dissuade people from using like dating sites or whatever. I've just never used them. And I don't really believe in them, in that I think that when you're doing all of this internal work, these people will just come to you. You'll magnetize them. Again, I have nothing against it. I know people who've met great partners in these, but I guess I just use it to illustrate the idea that when you're ready, if you build it, they will come.
yeah. I love that. I think working on yourself, so the version that you're showing up as is that up-leveled version, as you said, and the right people will show up in that frequency and vibration because that's what you're vibing at. Your energy will attract the right partner. I agree. My personal experience with dating apps, and it was short-lived, only like a few weeks. It's not the place to look for a conscious connection. Yeah, it's very geared towards a superficial match, and it's quite a toxic place. But I do feel that in the moments that I've created this version of the person that I wish to become, and then also created the version of, or the type of person that I wish to attract. The moment that I was solid within that vision, it almost like it showed up immediately. So it's almost like time and space collapses when you're ready. And I think, like you said,
Mhm.
it may take 2 years or 2.5 years or whatever, or it may take like a week. Like it's just there's no real difference, and that shift can happen, very significantly. And yeah, I think the impact is huge. Can I ask you, in like, so 35 years of doing this, you've spoken to thousands of men and women. Like, what do women want? And what do men want? What's your, I mean, you must have talked about this a thousand times, but what's your summarization of the, I don't know, top three, top five, top 10 things? Like, what do they want?
I think it comes back down to these archetypal qualities that we crave on this instinctual, primal level within each other. So I'd
Mm,
say for men, what they're craving and most attracted to in a woman is a woman who's solidly in her feminine and really knows how to open and surrender and to trust him. She trusts his direction, right? And reinforces that. And I think when she can truly open and surrender emotionally and sexually, that does it or undoes him in the best possible way, right? Like she, as opposed to the woman, like I said, when they're in this out of sync polarity and she's constantly bickering and standing over him and questioning his direction and his decisions, it's the opposite of that. She trusts him. I know you got this. You've got this. You've got it. You've got me. You've got us. Take it away, right? She allows that space for him to rise up into his masculine. And that's in your day to day life and sexually as well, right? She really knows how to open and surrender and submit.
mm,
And then the opposite for like what a woman is looking for is a man who can take charge and he's got direction in life. He's animating his masculine power and strength and energy. And he's constantly reinforcing to her, if you fall, I will catch you, right? I've got a container that I'm creating. I'm solid. I can, whatever you dish out, I can take it. When you are in the throes of a 2 hour cervical orgasm and you're screaming and yelling and in this tempestuous, wild version of yourself, it's like, I can handle it. Bring it on. I
mm,
got this, right? And so that's the constant dance of like her surrendering and him demonstrating, I can hold this, her
yeah.
trusting and opening to him and him proving. I just put up a post, I think, yes, a couple days ago on my Instagram. What's the most important thing a man can do?
Hmm.
Exactly what he says he's going to do. And
Yeah.
every time we post some version of that on my account, the floodgates of women and pussies lubricating and orgasms happening and women going, where can I find it? And of course, like, it takes two to tango, right? But
Yeah.
that's like the number one thing. And if that means like you say you're going to take out the garbage, take out the fucking garbage, right? If you say you're going to, whatever it is, you follow through because every single thing that you do as a man is reinforcing you can trust me. I'm a man of my word. I have integrity. Like the biggest turn on for me, integrity. I don't give a
Yeah.
fuck about your abs. I mean, it's a bonus if you've got abs, but like integrity gets me wet. Biggest lubricant out there. Like
Mhm.
it's like integrity, a man with integrity.
Yeah.
And for women, it's like a woman who can trust and open to her man, right? And it's like, yeah, you've got this. I trust you.
Mm. Yeah, I really love that. I think in that embodiment on both sides, owning your masculinity, owning your femininity, I think that is yeah, it's a massive turn on. I want to add to that a lot of your work is, I think the messaging that I interpret from my end is that there's an intention. You said a few minutes ago where you almost like gave your clients permission to experience the things that you're saying that are possible. And the moment you gave them permission is the moment that you expanded their mind and their consciousness. And I think with that being said, the intent that you go into a relationship, or particularly in the bedroom, is like the intent to please and the intent to serve and the intent to make sure that your woman is, well fucked. And I think conversely, when you have your woman who respects you, who lets you take the lead, who gives you a who worships your cock, like who gives you that kind of attention, in that soft, beautiful, feminine way. You're right. Like it gives you the power. I feel like, not that I'm there, but I feel like there's a part of being a well fucked man, which is having a well fucked woman. Does that make sense? It's almost like I am well fucked if you're knowing that you are well
Yeah.
fucked, right?
Yeah,
So,
I have a play on that where I say, that old phrase, behind every good man is a woman. And
yeah,
I say, no, au contraire, behind every good woman is a man
yeah,
ferociously thrusting and giving her everything he's got. And when
yeah,
your woman is well fucked, she will change your life, right? She will be your biggest support, your biggest energy boost. So it's in your best interest as a man to fuck your woman well, because when you don't, she will make your life hell. She will belittle you, chastise you, nag you, obliterate you, cock block you in every possible fucking way. But if you are fucking her well and she's orgasmically satiated and feels your masculine strength and power, there's nothing that she won't do. Then that endless channel that she is for the life force of the universe is directed and given to you.
mm,
Right, to amplify your work and your mission in the world and to support you in whatever way you can. Like your well fucked woman as a man is your secret weapon.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Just a couple of things. I want to talk about your um, well fucked man's salon. I think that's the name of it that's coming up. So I think a lot of men would be super keen. I'm certainly super keen to get into it. So there's a bit of, not a bit of talk, but I think there's a topic of men taking control in the bedroom, to the degree where some might say there's a bit of sort of dark energy, or some might say that, it's a bit of rough, I guess, controlling or something of that nature. In your work, is that something that you think is desirable as a woman, or some women crave, or do most women crave? Is it to be dominated in that sense? Because obviously that's a conditioning that, as a man, because I've got a cock and balls, I have to be very wary about what I do and say, and how I treat women. Obviously, you need to be respectful, but there's a connotation to men are toxic, men are forceful, men have degraded women who have this controlling force. Women have been suppressed. So there's all of this kind of like movement, which is undermining and conditioning us to think and feel and act a different way. But when it comes to the bedroom, there's a dance between this sort of light and shade, and dark and controlling and things like that. So can we touch on that a little bit and just give me your feedback from, whether it be your personal experience or the people that you coach?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's distinguish between early dating stages, behavior in a relationship, which is something different, and I'm not going to go there right now, versus like being in an established relationship, right? Where you've got certain parameters and trust set up. So I would say there's a reason why 50 Shades of Grey was a best-selling, whatever, 300 million copies, women reading it in the subway, getting wet all over the world, begging their men to dominate them. Like, obviously, a primal desire in women that has not been fulfilled of late, right? Where we've had this, like, as you say, like kind of a PC, sniveling snag. I often give this example, right? Of like, what would a woman prefer? Honey, if you're not busy later tonight, would you like if you don't have too much to do, do you think maybe we could have sex? And the woman's going to be like, I have so much lint to pick off my towels, honey. I can't make it happen. Versus if you go to your woman, you throw her up against the wall, you pin her wrists over her head, you spread her legs open with your knee, you thrust into her, nuzzle your stubble into her neck, and you're like, I'm gonna fuck this shit out of you. You are mine. And you throw her over your shoulder and you take her into the bedroom. She's gonna be like, I had all these appointments, but like, who cares? Like, I'm yours. You know what I mean? Like, She will drop
Yeah.
everything because she's looking to feel that energy. So, absolutely, 1,000% women want to feel that dominant strength power from men, and especially in bed. And again, caveat obviously within an established relationship where you're aware of these dynamics, but even, yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, getting into with all that the controversy around these things and consent. I'm not going to talk about the dating element of that, but
Sure.
presuming you're in a relationship, that yeah, 100%, that's what we want, right? And the is like for the man to take charge and even throw us around and really demonstrate that powerful masculine energy. We want to feel that. And again, this comes down to these archetypal expressions. We want to feel the strength and the power and the solidity of the man, both in his erection and in his physical movements. Like that if we push against him, he's going to hold us. He's not going to fall over flimsy, right? He's going to hold his ground and like, well, no, every woman loves to be tossed around a little bit. Every woman loves to be manhandled. There's obviously a line which can be negotiated in conscious, BDSM play, but up to that point, we all love it. Absolutely love it.
Mm.
A man who's got the touch of confidence and the energy of confidence and can demonstrate that with us, it's automatic lubricant for women.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think too, maybe some men might agree with this, is that like if you have been sort of conditioned to think that maybe that's off the table and it's something that is not conducive to a loving relationship or a connection at that level, there's a certain level to that which allows you to kind of stand in your real masculine like dominance and power, and that polarity between dominance and submission and things like that is a driving force. It's something that creates this dynamic that otherwise would be unattainable. And yeah, I think a lot of people, including myself, have had this sort of vanilla approach to lovemaking, which is, all soft and lovey and tenderoni. And I think that like, that certainly has its place. But when you add a little element of, darkness and dominance and that excitement, it's sort of like a part of the cake mix that has been missing for so long. It's why you're wondering why the recipe's not turning to shit every time. It's because you have this piece of the puzzle that's missing. You with me?
Sure, absolutely. And look, I think obviously in say a couple who've been estranged for a while, who aren't having sex, who've had a lot of issues, it's not something that you would just jump into. Oh, I'm gonna like dominate the shit out of you, bitch, you're
Yeah.
mine. It's like if there's work to be done to clear that space, that has to happen first, right? To reunite the couple and make sure they're on the same page. But I'm saying once we're in that zone already, then yes, this is that what I would call an exaggerated polarity, right? Where the man is more, that's what makes the most sparks fly. The most chemistry comes out of an exaggerated polarity, where the man is really, really embodying his masculine, the woman is really embodying her feminine. That is supercharged chemistry. But when the man is like neutralized and the woman is neutralized, that's two magnets repelling each other, right? That's the opposite of chemistry. That's repulsion, not even like indifference, it's repulsion from each other.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, look, I agree. It takes some courage and it takes some openness and a high level of communication and also vulnerability. Like that's kind of like a really juicy place to play in. And on the other side of that is deeper connection. And I think that a lot of people kind of really underplay that type of vulnerability. I think there's certainly power in all of that. So yeah, totally agree. In wrapping this up, can you tell me about your salon for men? Like the is it Well Fucked Man? Is that what it's called? The
Well,
program?
that's the end result. It's called Sexual Mastery for Men or
That's right. Yeah.
Supercock Sexual Mastery for
Yeah,
Men.
I
But
like
the
it.
yeah, the goal is to become a well-fucked man. So this is a 10-week online salon, I call them, which is an online program for men that is a combination of pre-recorded videos and then home play and live interactive calls and a members forum And it's all about how to own your masculine energy and power and channel that out into the world, even this so-called darker side of it, and how to support and seduce your woman, like everything from how to achieve the different vaginal orgasms in women and for yourself as a man to become a multi-orgasmic, can have sex all night, building your stamina, can learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation, man,
Mm.
and then taking all that energy out into the world to really be aligned with your purpose and your dharma as a man. So it's all combined, right? Who you are in bed is who you are in life. And if you are, like we said earlier, a well-fucked man with a well-fucked woman, that's going to supercharge every element of your existence.
Yeah, yeah, sounds sounds great to me. That the I really like the, not that I've achieved this, but the separation of ejaculation and orgasm. Um, that's certainly a super interesting area that I'd like to explore even further. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Okay, so where can people go to find it? Does it start soon, or do you sort of run that on a like regular basis, or where do
It
people go?
only runs once a year, and
Oh wow.
registration opens at the end of this month, end of August.
Okay.
And then I believe it starts in the middle of September and then runs for 10 weeks at that point. So everything is online. You can do this from anywhere in the world, and you have lifetime access. And so if you get busy or overwhelmed, it's like a library of the ultimate compendium of sexual content that you have forever, even through all the updates we make throughout the years. So it's the place I put a lot of great material out in the world on my Instagram and my podcast for free, but this is the place where we take everything to the next level. Like, how do you learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation? How
Mm.
do you learn to have a 3 hour sex date? How do you bring your woman to multiple cervical orgasms and have her squirting ejaculate that hits the ceiling, right? So these are like the step by step. I'm with you all the way to help you get to these places. I want to put out as many well-fucked men into the world as we possibly can. That's my life's
Yeah.
mission.
Mhm.
And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
good. You're
mhm.
doing God's work there, Kim. I think that's it's your intention. It's really good. All right. Hey, listen, it's been such a great opportunity and time to talk to you. I think, like I said at the outset, I've listened to so many of your podcasts and watched your videos on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. It's been inspiring and it's certainly made a huge impact on my life. So thank you for that. I'll obviously put all your information in the show notes. So whenever anyone's listening to this, they can go and find you and listen and learn and grow and elevate into a well-fucked man and woman. So yeah, thank you. You're amazing. I
And
appreciate you,
there's
and I look forward to circling back soon.
amazing. And just so people know, throughout the year, we run courses. So there's a men's course coming up soon, but then we have vaginal kung fu for women, coming together for couples, and how to be a well-fucked woman, plus an orgasmic birth and pregnancy course called Sexy Mama. So we run these salons throughout the year, once every year for each of them. But if it's you hear this and the one that you're looking for isn't running yet, it's coming soon.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah.
All right, all right, Kim. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much.
Look forward to talking with you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.